What's up, Starcraft fans? Today we're doing the tier list for Price of Poggers on Malwarfare. Brian, let's hear the mutation.
Malwarfare is the map where we have to escort Orana's transport as it purifies security terminals from a rogue AI. We win the game if she purifies all 5 terminals, but we lose if the enemies or suppression towers destroy the transport. Kill bots spawn from enemy buildings. You can't fight them, but they will fight you and will deactivate after destroying a preset number of your guys. All commands cost money.
Okay, so we have Joni and Edwin home in the call with us today. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Yeah,
Doing well?
getting there slowly.
That makes one of us. I'm dead. I am so drained. I'm catatonic. Anyway, Joni, how do we rank the commanders this week?
So we have, in essence, we've got 2 economic mutators this week. Is kind of what it boils down to. So for me, this is about who can be most cost effective, not only in terms of building their army up, but obviously because of microtransactions as well. Economic in terms of, moving it around.
Bring it around town!
Small groups obviously being ideal. But yeah, this is basically about keeping costs down for me.
Keeping costs down. Alright, austerity. What do you think, Edwin Home?
Yeah, it's basically a question of how close can you get to free with your units. The more expensive your cheapest unit is, the worse you're going to be. And anyone with like free units is doing pretty well this week, especially if they're easily commandable and don't require a lot of resources to move around. So
Miserly. That's the word I was looking for. Miserly. I was thinking of sorry, I wasn't listening. I was thinking, what term is it where you hardly spend anything and you get to you get as close to free as possible? Miserly. That's what I was thinking. Anyway, let's begin. Abathur, where do we have him?
Abathur does have free units.
What is free often proves most costly.
But they take a while to get to, and they're pretty expensive already, so microtransactions can make it a little bit harder to make a lot of them if you're having to command them around, so you want to be very economical with where you move them, utilize deep tunnel, things like that. Swarm hosts, obviously, in case anyone missed it, are the free units. In a way, the locusts are the free units, I suppose. But if you can get there, he'll do well. But it's going to be a little bit tough to get there. And notably as well, Malwarfare is a map that sort of commands things from you pretty early on compared to some other maps. It's not one where you get a lot of build-up time. So with that, it's going to be a little tough to get built up. But if you can make it there, you're going to have a fantastic time. So I had him in B tier.
B tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, completely agreed. Like, judicious use of swarm hosts is going to be the way forward for Abathur this week. They are good for this. Let's be clear. Like, they have the ideal sort of dual purpose in that you can just mass produce them, designate some to deal with kill bots, and the rest of them to deal with sort of the map, which is advantageous. So yeah, I viewed him in a very similar manner. I think that like P2 is going to be useful for this just because of ease of mobility. Like, this is quite a long map. And just stuff like movement times to get from A to B, particularly when you start getting to the 3rd and 4th stations. I personally think that deep tunnel is going to be like of benefit this week. I had him in B tier as well.
I get what you guys are saying. I have a slight concern with locusts. Once you get to a certain level of biomass, not even the biomass level, just the health of the locusts could be a problem. Because if kill bots don't destroy their target, they will retarget and shoot something else. The problem is if you are pushing forward and then the kill bot comes up, your locusts will try to tank damage for the transport as the kill bots around it. And if the kill bots cannot destroy the locusts, they will retarget to the transport and deal damage to it. It has happened to me before. I'm actually speaking from experience. You have no problem surviving, but you take so long to feed that the kill bots actually switch target and just shoot down the transport until there's basically nothing left when it reaches the terminal. So how about a solution where instead of just brute forcing your way forward, you just leave some buildings behind, because kill bots spawn from buildings. If you leave some buildings behind, you have a higher chance of having the kill bot spawn closer to you, and instead of using locusts, you can just have evolution chambers, which Abathur should be fine with because those cost only minerals. And with the second prestige, you're not really starving for minerals. What do you think about that?
I think that's fine. You could also just have a pack of swarm hosts that are dedicated killbot ones that you keep back so they don't get any biomass picked up, and try to keep ahead of the transport as much as possible. Clear the buildings out ahead of it, and then you'll have a buffer of time to get in the way before it can be right on top of the transport. But I think the Evo Chambers thing works fine, although there's a lot of buildings at the end of the map, so most of the cobots are probably spawning from the end of the map.
What some of the more experienced co-op players do is they try to clear the rear end first if they can manage it. You'll see some later commanders who might have that capability, so that the kill bots, instead of spawning from the end and then meeting the transport as it goes to the terminal, it will spawn closer to your base where it can focus on feeding it without having to actually fight there. So your units don't trade off and just are basically food. Anyway, I guess either way, that's all B. It's all B. So Abathur ends up in B. Prestige-wise, second prestige.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Alarak, where do we have him?
So Alarak has a sort of couple of issues this week. One of which is that he is a Protoss commander, and therefore feeding is a problem. The other of which is the fact that he tends to have a pretty high cost army, which from a microtransaction point of view is going to sap your economy even more. That particular issue can be gotten around with a little bit of work by basically rallying units to the mothership. And then just moving the mothership around, and you will realistically only be looking to micro Alarak himself during sort of moments of contact. Having said that, he still has the problem of killbots. Now, the reality to it is you are going to hope that your ally is going to put in some work here, but he is going to end up, dependent on your ally. He is going to end up like basically feeding probes for the entire thing. Is pretty much sort of his best response here. He struggles pretty badly on this one from mutated, etc. I had him sort of C to D tier.
C to D. What do you think, Edmund Home?
Let's see. I'm unmuted, right? Sorry. Yes, I think. Yeah, Alarak's gonna have a tough time. Obviously, Mama is pretty good at pushing, but Mama can only do so much, and then just trying to feed on top of microtransactions is going to suck. So yeah, I had him in D tier.
D tier. Okay, both of you had him in D tier. Let's put him in D tier. Prestige-wise, I guess no prestige because D is considered bad. So let's just move on. Arcturus, where do we have him?
Arcturus is okay. You can clear the map pretty well with Arcturus, which is a good goal to have. And he does have 40 mineral workers instead of 50, but that's still pretty expensive. Drop bunkers are nice to get in the way of things if you need to, and just hope you can clear the map with ESOs or whatever your poison of choice is. You do have the drop pods, so you can make it to the back of the map, but you'd probably want to be P3 so that you can suicide bomb the defenders there and then deal with the buildings. If you can do that, he'll do okay. So I had him in B tier as well.
B tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, very, very similar. Like, he has the advantage of basically having cheap units universally, and particularly if you are playing P3, they do pack a punch. Troopers with weapons do like bring you a significant amount of bang for your buck. But he still doesn't have like brilliant answers. He doesn't have those free units, so you're still going to have to tackle killbots in some way, shape, or form. And like ET said, Workers is going to be the best bet there. I had him in B tier also.
B tier. Okay, both of you had him in B. Let's put Arcturus in B. Prestige-wise, third one.
Yes.
All right. Let's move on to someone who's not. Oh, sorry, B. Let's move on to someone who's not B tier. Artanis. Where do we have him?
Yeah, so Artanis, similar to Alarak, has Protoss problems, but simply doesn't have the same level of sort of push or strength in his army. With Artanis, you are inevitably going to end up moving around a decent-sized clump of units, which in and of itself is going to be extremely expensive. And as you noted earlier, CTG, this map like ramps quite fast. So Artanis has that double problem of actually trying to achieve like a decent mass in the first instance to deal with the first couple of stations. Sorry, first 3 stations. Personally, I found like pushing into that like the sort of 3rd station area, sort of the like top middle of the map, that was punishing with Artanis, just because you've already like effectively wasted so much of your economy on killbots. I massively struggled with him, to be honest. I was playing P3, not in fairness that I found it like particularly relevant. It gives you a little bit more pushing power with space archons, but in reality, Artanis is going to struggle this week. I had him in E tier.
E tier. That's pretty low. What do you think, Edwin?
Yeah, he sucks.
So you just suck.
Most of his like top bars and things like that are related to like survivability for his units. Obviously shield overcharge is usually his saving grace in mutations, if anything, and it's kind of a negative in some ways in this. P3 helps with it because then you can just target your army that's not near the killbots, so that's good. And you also want P3 because you don't want Guardian Shell, because that makes feeding way worse. So you have to go P3. He's probably whatever's below F tier if you're anything but P3. And yeah, he's a little rough. So
Kate Blockwell tier. E tier. Okay.
Yeah.
Artanis goes in E tier. Someone who's not E tier, Dehaka. Where do we have him?
Dehaka is pretty solid as well. He does have primal hosts, which can feed once you get up to them. It takes a little while to get up to them though, so you're gonna have to feed with like drones and your primal lings. If you can make it there, you'll be fine.
If I can make it there,
especially because pack leaders can kind of clear the map very quickly, and for relatively low cost, since it's just one unit or a few units in Glevik's case. But once you clear the map, then microtransactions really isn't going to be a big deal because you can just solo with Dehaka and pack leaders if you need to. So he'll do all right. I had him in B tier as well. B
tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, so exactly the same strategy, very similar view. I basically rated Dehaka as a slightly better Abathur on this one. The sort of single biggest advantage being is that basically pack leaders can look after a huge area, defending the transport effectively entirely on their own. So there is an argument, I think, to be made with Dehaka that, particularly if you're playing P2, you can basically utilize your primal hosts pretty much exclusively to defend killbots, so the rest of the map simply with pack leaders. So I had Dehaka in A tier. I thought he was effectively like better Abathur this week.
What do you think about A tier, Edwin?
Yeah, that's fine with me. I think, yeah, he's probably a little better than Abathur, largely just being able to push so much better than Abathur can.
Oh yeah.
And with fewer units. So yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, Dehaka goes in A tier. Prestige wise, second one, right?
I'd do second. Yeah.
All right. Fenix, where do we have him?
So Fenix, Protoss commander. Yes, you do have the advantage of like slightly reduced units, but they're not reduced enough to make it, in my view, sort of hugely advantageous. I do think playing P2 is the way to go with him. When you're doing that, you have the advantage of being able to push exclusively with quite a small group of champions, which does make microtransactions like less of an issue. You are still, however, going to be having to feed with probes or very, very cheap fodder units, which is going to reduce his ability to build up that sort of shell farm. I don't think Fenix struggles as much as some Protoss commanders. C to D tier.
C to D. Okay. What do you think, Edmund?
Yeah, he's going to have a little bit of a struggle, I think, but Caldalis covers a world of sin, so I had him in C tier. I think he's going to be a little bit better than Alarak because you can just, as long as it's not an air comp, so that there is a bit of a star there, I guess, but without an air comp, you can kind of just pure Caldalis, although as much as you possibly can, and then just throw zealots and probes at the killbots. So I had him a little bit above some of the other Protoss commanders, but yeah, I had him in C tier.
All right, unanimous C tier then. That's where he goes. Prestige wise, second one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on, Han and Horner. Where do we have them?
Han and Horner has the salvage, which is something, but it's mostly just going to be counteracting microtransactions here. Outside of that, you do have pretty easy mass production of 50 mineral units with Reapers, so you'll be able to do that. And bombing platforms can, in theory, help clear the map, especially the back end of buildings. So there's that, but they're just not great in general. So and the feeding is not the best. So I had them in C tier.
C tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, sort of. Han and Horner are one of those commanders that, particularly when you get these economic mutators, you do end up having to strike quite a delicate balance between sort of pushing power and dealing with other things at home, like namely killbots in this instance. And I think that because they are one of the traditionally slightly weaker commanders, actually achieving that balance is quite difficult with them. I think it is a bit of a juggling act here, which is difficult to get right. Personally, I shied away from using bombing platforms slightly on this, purely because I wanted to try to make units as cheaply as possible, which would allow me to like stretch that economy to try and deal with the mutators as best as possible. But yeah, I do think basically a pretty difficult time. I had them in D tier.
D tier. What do you think about D tier, Edmund?
I think salvage is quite useful for you and your ally. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I think not using the bombing platforms is a mistake. They're cheap enough that if you can get the buildings cleared, especially like we were talking about getting the buildings at the back of the map cleared so that your allies' army and whatever little bit of army you have is able to just fight the regular units. It's going to be I think it's going to be a lot better than the other folks I have in D tier, like Alarak. I think Han and Horner is going to do more than Alarak could. So I'd say C tier.
Yeah. I can see that. I'm perfectly happy with C tier. I will readily admit I'm not the not the strongest Han and Horner player.
Not the strongest Han and Horner player. All right, neither am I. Let's put Han and Horner in C tier. Sounds fair. Moving on to someone who is not C tier, probably Karax. Where do we have him?
In addition to that, obviously Protoss commander problems. On top of all of that, Spear of Adun, yes, it costs, but not necessarily the end of the world in and of itself. His ability to sort of push into areas and then build up static there, I think sort of counterbalances that quite nicely, because it means that, in reality, you're not having sort of micro stuff. You whack up a load of static defense and he's fine in that respect. But as always is the case with Karax, his sort of fundamental weakness against killbots just presents a raft of problems, basically. I had him in E tier.
E tier.
But I can see an argument for F.
What do you think, Edmund?
I think I have that argument. No, yeah, he's abysmal. I'd say you probably want to go P1 just so that your repair beam isn't affecting your probes, and your static defense is a little stronger, you're basically hoping that your ally is able to clear the areas that you need to defend, and then you can try to defend it with turrets and the top bar, because clearing yourself is going to be a big pain this week. And you're just feeding with probes, and yeah, I mean, largely hoping that your top bar helps your ally. Unity barrier, like I said, if you're P1, shouldn't matter too much. So that said, though, it's it's just a pain in the butt. So I had him in F tier.
Are you okay with F tier, Joni?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there are significant aspects of Karax's game which is actively detrimental to everyone on the map. So yeah, I'm totally happy with him in F tier. Yeah.
All right, Karax goes in F tier. Our first F tier in a while. My Donnie. Let's move on to someone who is not in F tier though. Kerrigan. Where do we have him?
Kerrigan is fairly good because she has Zerglings into Broodlords, and Kerrigan herself can help clear the map pretty well. Microtransactions is almost going to be a bigger pain, because that compounded with the kill bots is going to make it a little bit harder to feed, but I think she can still get it done. And once you get up to Broodlords, you just have a set of those, and it's kind of free from there for the kill bots, and the microtransactions shouldn't be too bad either. So yeah, I had her in A tier.
A tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, Kerrigan's hero unit is basically strong enough that ramping your army up in order to support her is not enough of a priority that you need to divert massive resource to like getting it done really fast. So as a result, you can basically spend your entire economy trying to deal with kill bots, and using Kerrigan, like ET said, to basically deal with everything else. Liberal use of Omega Worms, as always with her, is always going to help. But yeah, in reality, she is pretty like resilient to this. Recommend the same comp that ET did. I personally think there is possibly an argument to be made to play P2 on this, despite the sort of reduced immobilization wave. This is one of those maps where you're not, to a certain extent, encountering those massively rugged encampments. Having said that, there is also an argument to be made to play like P0, P3. I think with her, she's probably strong enough that you can pick your poison on that. So yeah, I'm happy with Kerrigan in A tier.
All right, so both of you say A tier. Kerrigan goes in A tier. Prestige wise, you said second one? I think no prestige is better. Or third. Just
I think,
the encampments are robust enough on this
I think
map
they
on
warned it.
mobilization wave. But
yeah.
anything except one is probably fine. I would probably go P0.
Yeah, not going first prestige is important because, as I said earlier, you can clear the rear base first. You can fly an Overlord there, pop on a Mega Worm, clear out the buildings, so that the kill bots have a higher probability of spawning near your base, where you can just rally Zerglings to. Anyway, yeah, moving on. Nova, where do we have him?
Yeah, so Nova is sort of double pain this week. She's not brilliant at dealing with killbots. You know, her default her only option on that really is just is workers. However, she is also sort of catastrophically expensive to build up, and when your eco is taking a bit of a beating, personally, I think she suffers more than really any other Terran commander on this set of mutators. You are going to want to do standard Kerrigan things like using libs, siege tanks, etc. to defend. There is.
I don't think Liberators and siege tanks are standard Kerrigan things.
Sorry, standard Nova things. We're in
I'm
the same
listening!
boat, CTG. You've got to be sympathetic. all knackered. Look at the bags under my eyes. There you go. Like do standard Nova things. Again, I suspect there is an argument to be made here for playing P3, that you can use Nova herself to dive around the map, clearing out encampments, etc., and at least to sort of localize killbot spawns. But in reality, she is going to be struggling economically on this, and getting that critical mass of units out is going to be tougher than normal. I had her in D tier.
D tier. What do you think, Evanhelm?
Yeah, I think she's definitely not great at feeding. But if your ally can help a little bit, then Nova can kind of just clear the map relatively quickly with P3, and then no more killbots, and then just
That's not
microtransactions on its
true.
own isn't.
You cannot stop
It's
killbots
not
from
true.
spawning.
It-
The suppression tower
Yeah.
Shoot, right.
structures
Yeah,
and
suppression tower
the
spots.
Yeah.
bonus objective spots can spawn killbots, so that is a no-go, sir.
Never mind. All right. Well, yeah, Nova's even worse than she already was. It was already going to be rough, but now it's rougher. Yeah. Then without that, yeah, it's a bit of a tough time. You're not going to help much with the killbots. You'll be able to feed just SCVs and then try to kind of just rely on Nova and a couple units, maybe just airstrikes.
Maybe Liberators.
Probably just mass Raven, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Liberators are so mineral heavy. I think Ravens, it's twice the gas to the mineral cost, and obviously minerals are being used on the SCVs. So I'd probably just go mass Raven as much as possible.
That works.
So probably actually P1, not P3, and then hope. But yeah, D tier.
D tier. Okay, both of you did say D tier, right? All right. She is decidedly less blonde than Nova or than Kerrigan this week. Did the opposite of what you said. Okay. Nova ends up being decidedly less blonde than Kerrigan this week. All right. Let's move on to someone who's obviously not as blonde as either of them. Raynor, where do we have him?
Raynor is a bit of a tough one this week as well because he is such an economy-focused commander, and you don't really want to be spending your mule money on feeding if you can help it, but you can't help it this week. And his units are not very cheap either. They're cheap-ish, but it's not great. So the main problem is having anything left over after you feed to actually do the map. And you're just going to kind of struggle with that. So I had him in D tier as well. You're going to go bio, and hopefully you can do a little bit with the Hyperion and whatever army you have left over, but it's going to be a struggle fest.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, this was sort of the other commander that I had in mind specifically when talking about, striking that balance between dealing with killbots specifically and actually just completing the map. Exactly as ET said, I think striking that balance is really difficult. Don't play P1 for all of the obvious reasons. You need those mules in order to keep your eco going, sort of through the hard times here. I did not know whether, and they're not good enough to make a recommendation anyhow, but I couldn't tell whether it was better to play P3 and try to get enough of an air comp out to reduce those cooldowns so that you could just use cooldowns much more often, or whether you were better off playing P0 and then attempting to kind of basically bunker up around the objectives in order to have that slightly more resilient defense. But in reality, either way, it's going to be an absolute sufferfest. I had Raynor sort of actually D to E. I think he's going to have a tough time.
Okay. Both of you are fine with D, so I guess Raynor goes in D. You said D, right, Edmund?
Yep.
All right. I did not hear incorrectly. The headphones are right on my ears. I hear clearly that time. Set Boy, where do we have him?
Yeah, so Step Boy actually deals with this really well, I think. P2 basically means that you can solo the map with Gary. He plays extremely strong microtransactions on the one hero unit, not going to do you any dramas. Rally everything to him.
Rally to me!
If you want supporting, Lings, whatever. He also, though, has Corruptors. Sorry, not Corruptors. Infestors. There you go. Lack of sleep once more. His Infestors give him free units that are very, very decent at dealing with basically whatever problem they're put to. Getting there takes a bit of a ramp, but evolution chamber blocks, etc. Early doors if you need to. But yeah, I felt that Stetmann dealt with this almost as well as anyone really on this. So I had Stetmann in S tier this week.
S tier, really? What do you think, Edmund?
I mean, I'm a fan of the Step Boy and all, but I didn't quite have him in S tier. I think
There are two guys in S tier. We all know who those two are.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a little bit tougher, especially with microtransactions, microing Gary and things like that. I wouldn't necessarily say Evo chamber blocks. I think just mass laying in the early game is plenty good enough. Don't get the reduced damage maybe if you want to be more careful about that, but you can probably just get it and it'll be fine anyways. Yeah, just lings into infestors, and it's a pretty easy time from there. So I had him in A tier. I think there's definitely two people that are head and shoulders above the rest, but he's pretty good. So I had him in A.
A tier. Are you okay with A tier, Joni?
Yeah, look, I totally get it. The one argument that I will make, and I will have to reference, spoiler alert, have to reference one of the commanders that will go into S tier, is that personally, I think the inclusion of microtransactions on this mutator specifically, without the hero unit that Stetmann has to really sort of shore things up, I think sort of the inclusion of microtransactions makes that late game push less free for one of the other S tier commanders. So I was using as a reference point how I feel Stetmann plays throughout the entire game. And I think that once he's up and running properly, I just don't see him having any problems, basically, in exactly the same way as one of the other S tier commanders, which is why I had him there. Basically, I am completely happy with A tier as well. I mean, he is, it's good either way. So yeah, certainly not one that I'm going to die in any ditches over.
All right. I do see your point, though. There is a bit of distance to travel from the main to wherever you are fighting in the last two sets. So I do see that point. So that could be a case to bring that one commander down to A tier, though, rather than bring Stetboy up to S. Because the other guy's just, it's just like what mutation for that other guy. Okay, anyway, I guess it's not unanimous S, therefore it's A, which is still good. A is still really good. A is elite. S is just on a whole other level. Speaking of whole other level, Stukov, where do we have him?
Yeah.
It's that other guy. Yeah, Stukov is incredibly good this week. You just build bunkers, move them maybe once in the entire game, and then you have a little top bar that costs you like 1 mineral to redirect your entire army anywhere you want it to go. So it's basically the best possible bypass for microtransactions and killbots wrapped up into one commander. It's P3 week. Rejoice, P3 enjoyers, and it'll be a really easy time in the early game. If you need it, you have broodlings you can pop on a building to get lots of free units there as well. So
early game,
super easy,
mid game,
super free,
late game, second game, third game.
Any time of the game. I would assume you probably don't need it by the time you've got like 10 bunkers out. You're probably dealing with the killbots without even thinking about them. But you can still use them if you need.
If they
them.
spawn near your base and you don't feel like box selecting a few infested, click killbot solved.
That's true. Yeah. If you didn't clear the buildings out on like the upper left or whatever, and they come from there. Although I guess there's the chance that they spawn from the bonus building, right? So
I do recommend that you don't clear those buildings though, because like I said, you'd rather have the feeding occur near your base rather than near the transport. I think for most commanders that's the case.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, S tier.
All right, S tier, single S for now. Swann, rather. Where do we have him?
Johnny probably wants to give his commentary on Stukov.
I forgot. Sorry, Joni.
Well, I mean, there's not really anything else to say either. I mean, like S tier, box ticked. Literally the only thing you have to do is decide when to move your bunkers. Like that's the only thing you need to do as a P3 Stukov player this week. So yeah, I'll keep it short. I'll keep it sweet. Easy S tier. Moving on to Swann.
Sorry for skipping you. Moving on. Swann, where do we have him?
Yeah, so Swann is another where he just has problems this week. primarily with killbots. You do have the advantage, and I think this is quite possibly one of those weeks where playing P1 in order to deploy the slowing laser drill is quite possibly of advantage, because then the only thing you're really needing to micro is factories. So I would probably err towards using P1 in order that the drill will auto target stuff if you don't want to. But again, feeding killbots is going to be the biggest problem he has in all likelihood. So I found him difficult to rank, because the reality to playing Swann this week is he does, despite the usage of the laser drill, like, stuff with that is quite slow. And particularly in the earlier stages of this map, there is a bit of time pressure to like clear and push. So keeping up with that as Swann, particularly as the map progresses, can be a bit tougher. I had him C to D, but I'm not sure if I'm sort of 100% correct with that, but we'll see.
What do you think, Edwin Home?
I was kind of between B and C tier with Swann, because you can just go pure laser drill, and that will do fairly good at most things, and you can just feed with SCVs. The main problem is the suppression towers. The laser drill isn't really going to clear suppression towers particularly quickly. But if you have any kind of ally that will clear those, which any ally can clear those if you're handling the feeding and whatnot, then the drill will do pretty well against all the enemy attack waves, can do pretty well against clearing the enemy bases. So yeah, I do think it's P1 drill this week, and yeah, I'm good with C tier. I don't think it's going to be fantastic or anything, but he'll pull his own weight with that, I think, with that and the feeding.
All right, both of you guys put Swann in C tier. Let's put Swann in C tier. I will give you some insight. I did play Swann. You guys, can you guess how many command centers I had constantly pumping out SCVs throughout the entire game?
7.
Wow. Did you also play
Yeah.
Swann? That's what You're like psychic or something. Yes, I did. Wow. I didn't expect you to get on the first try. I did have 7 command centers, and I did use the laser drill, and I did have a Dehaka ally. The Dehaka ally's role was to clear, so I don't have to think about offense. But once the area is cleared, I just needed like 2 or 3 static defense at each of the places where the enemy waves could spawn or where the suppression towers could spawn. Actually, a single blaster billy at the suppression tower is enough to shoot it down while also being laser drilled down. But of course, this is considering my ally was doing the pushing forward. I was concerned with defense and feeding with my 7 command centers. I had more units fed than my Zerg ally. It was pretty good. Yeah, I do think B to C makes sense, because I do think, even though Dehaka did do the clearing and he got more kills, it's not double my kills. It's not like that many. And I did feed more, which I consider is the more difficult portion, especially if you're a Swann. And your SCVs repair each other automatically. You have to right click the auto repair so that they would just stand there menacingly or being menaced. Of course, it doesn't matter once the later kill bots arrive. They don't get to repair that long anyway. But before that point, like the couple SCVs you have there repairing your turrets while they're getting shot at by the kill bots do matter. While they're trying to stay alive against the vultures and the Zerglings trying to shoot them down, they do matter. So I think, yeah, B to C sounds right, but yeah, let's settle on C. So it's a little more conservative. Swann goes in C. Let's move on. Tychus, where do we have him?
Tychus doesn't have great feeding, but he does have great clearing. You're basically just spamming SCVs and going P2 and hoping that that'll be enough. The problem is all of that feeding is going to heavily hamstring your ability to get additional mercs out and to get any kind of upgrades for your mercs. So it's a tough week. If for once, it's a difficult week for Tychus. I had him in D tier.
D tier. What do you think, Joni?
So I was much more optimistic about it just because P2 is so strong that actually that sort of those delayed upgrades I didn't found made like a huge difference. Yes, feeding is a problem. Your only two options really are SCVs and Sirius turrets. Sirius turrets not being a yes, they're free, but they're on a timer. They're not a great option, but it is at least another option.
Revitalizers.
Despite all, yeah, any of these small little sort of nuggety freebies. Despite all
units.
Of that, yeah, like despite all of that, however, Tychus' pushing is still like seconds to not very many. So I actually had him in B tier this week. I felt that in reality, the only challenge you have with him really is pushing. He's so chonky that you can get away with basically not microing him at all. Really, just use the grenade when it comes off cooldown, and that's your lot. So I was sort of much more optimistic about his ability to deal with things, and I think that as per several of the commanders this week, sort of one of those ones that if your ally can help like at all, then he realistically has a pretty easy time of it in terms of dealing with this map as it is. So yeah, I had him in B tier. I can certainly see an argument for him being in C tier. I don't think he's D tier.
What do you think, Eppenholm?
D tier is fine with me.
C tier?
That's fine. He is very good at pushing. Just the
all right.
The mutators.
Both of you agree with C? Let's put Tychus in C. There we go. Prestige-wise, second one, because that's the only one that makes sense.
Yeah,
Vorazun.
Yeah.
The first one for lower cooldown on the Sirius turrets.
Vorazun. Where do we have him?
Really desperately clutching at straws.
Sorry, go ahead.
CTG. Yeah. Sorry, I just need 30 seconds to go and deal with the. Vorazun just has a raft of problems this week, same as all the other Protoss commanders. Feeding is a nightmare. Any economic problems that Vorazun encounters, I personally find like really sort of stifle her. Her ability to get an army up, particularly given her sort of traditional weakness against air comps anyway. Like you are admittedly usually gas starved, being mineral starved as well. Is just such an issue in terms of getting that sustainability in your army comp. Obviously, she does have free units to a certain extent in terms of Shadow Guard. You're going to want to use them to push, though. You're certainly not going to want to be feeding with those guys. I found it a very, very painful process with Vorazun this week. I had her basically alongside Artanis in E tier.
E tier. What do you think, Eppenholm?
Yeah, Vorazun sucks.
So you just suck.
And is not good this week. She's basically just feeding probes, and that's about it. And then, yeah, any kind of economic anything really messes with Vorazun, who's already kind of on a tight schedule when it comes to her economy. You do have Time Stop, which is great for clearing, and the Shadow Guard that come from it will be great for clearing, and that will be basically your entire contribution. If you're the one having to feed, that'll be your entire contribution to anything besides feeding on the map will be your Time Stops, which is not nothing. So for that reason, I actually had her in D tier, because Time Stops are really going to do quite a lot to help here, I think, just to get the initial clearing done, and then hopefully your ally can do the other 70 or so %. So I had her in D tier.
What do you think about D tier, Joni?
Yeah, so I was less optimistic about sort of how useful Time Stop is actually on this map. I think that, and I used it for exactly the same purpose. I used it for clearing, but what I found was that because the waves come in what is effectively trickles, sort of in between clearing areas, is that actually for sort of for achieving the mission outcomes on this, like I found time stop to actually be sort of not very useful when you're at the terminals. So I sort of, whilst I don't debate the usefulness of time stop in general terms, I found that the difficulty that she had in terms of producing that army comp, specifically if it's an air comp that you're up against, like, you know, her Corsairs, despite being great, they do ramp quite slowly. And their ability to like deal damage, particularly in those sort of early doors, is, I would say, like, questionable. So I found her to have, you know, that sort of combination of time stop being less useful than normal, and what I perceived to be a relatively slow sort of ramp up, particularly against air comps. I thought her to worse than, like, particularly like an Alarak.
What I'd say is you don't want to use it to defend the terminals. You want to use it to clear the terminals. And my mind was just, you know, you can, as Vorazun, I would say, you can completely handle the feeding and you can handle the clearing of the new areas. And if that's all you do, does that make you D tier or E tier? I think it makes you D tier because that just means your ally is just having to play the map with only microtransactions active. So obviously you're not pulling your weight fully, which would be C tier, but you're close because you are completely eliminating the actually tough mutator here, and you're still clearing the map. Yeah, that was my thought on D tier versus E.
Yeah, I think you know what, like, I think I was comparing her directly to Alarak because Protoss. Actually, when you compare her to like a Raynor, she is probably at no more of a disadvantage, if I'm honest. So yeah, I'm happy to put her in D tier.
Okay. No prestige because D tier is considered bad. But someone who's not bad, Zagara. What do you have him?
Yeah, Zagara is S tier against kill bots, obviously, but the microtransactions could be a bit of a pain this week. The main thing is just, I think if you rally your hatcheries to wherever you're wanting, and your Baneling Nest and your Scourge Nest, obviously. If you rally those and try to rely on that as much as possible, then it'll be a lot cheaper than rallying 300 units at a time to different places. I think she's still probably S tier. I know we were sort of alluding to the issue of the final base and everything, but again, I think by that point, if you've been cost efficient enough, which you should be able to be just by utilizing Banelings that are free, you'll have enough money to do whatever attack moves and things that you need to do around to the map. And yeah, so I'd have her in S tier still.
Plus, you can build forward hatcheries, which is what I normally do for
That's
this
true.
map. What do you think, Joni? I didn't forget you this time. Ha!
Being included, the dream.
Inclusiveness.
Yeah, I totally agree with ET and went through basically exactly the same thought process when I was deciding where I wanted to put her. You know,
Put her in jail.
you're gonna want to play, you're gonna want to play P1 because of kill bots. Forward rallying, absolutely essential. Like, frankly, if you're looking to carry a mutation, you probably ought to be doing that anyway at this stage. Building forward hatchery is always a good thing. Yeah, do people forget to do it? Yes, all the time. Fair enough. I think, yeah, the key thing from my point of view is that, and it's kind of that caveat that ET mentioned. Like, if you are playing well enough with her, you should be floating like more than enough eco by the end of the game. Because Killbots is effectively still, you know, pretty much free. That like microtransactions shouldn't be an issue either. The one caveat that I was sort of thinking of very, very specifically was like the Zergling evasion piece with her. Obviously, against Killbots, you don't want to be using Zergling evasion because they won't die as fast. But that does reduce the survivability of her Zerglings by like a really significant amount, basically by half. So I kind of, there was a what if for me there around to what extent does that impact her eco across the whole span of a game. I personally didn't have a problem with it which is why I put her in S tier as well. But I think it is one of those ones that's more of a borderline than with her. But I had her in S tier too.
Okay. Both of you had her in S tier. Let's put Zagara in S tier. Prestige wise, first one. Moving on. Zeratul, where do we have him?
Yeah, Zeratul's not great on this. He has traditional Protoss problems in terms of feeding. Cannons are good, which is nice because it does alleviate some of the burden of microtransactions to a certain extent. There is also, I think, the argument to be made here that because if you play an army comp for Zeratul and you are making intelligent use of void arrays to actually move your army around in the main instance, that if you play an army comp with Zeratul, you tend to float a lot of minerals. You are typically gas starved, whereas if you're playing cannons, you tend to be more mineral starved. So both, I think, are perfectly viable. Both give him decent pushing power. I would argue that an army comp probably gives him better pushing power. But he does encounter some frictions here, which under normal circumstances you wouldn't necessarily sort of get with him. So I had Zeratul in C tier. I think that either way you choose to play him, he has some issues.
Okay. What do you think, Edwin?
I don't think he's quite C tier, if I remember right. Yes, I'm remembering. Yes. Oh, actually, no, I have him in C tier. Yeah, he. I had to pull up my tier list.
You had your.
It sounded wrong, but I guess it's right.
You had your usual Kerrigan strategies moment.
Yeah. The problem is feeding really alongside microtransactions because I think you can basically just use Zeratul for 90% of the map and then clear or feed with probes, which is good, but it's doing well with just Zeratul typically, at least for me, involves a good bit of clicking, which is going to cost you a lot of money with microtransactions, and he's not as good as just the B tier guys. Was my main reasoning is I'd much rather be Dehaka, or I guess Dehaka's A tier, Abathur or Minsk, or folks like that. So for that reason, I had him in C tier as well.
All right. So Zeratul does end up in C tier. Okay, do we have a double S this week?
Stukov.
Is he?
I think so. I mean, you basically just play like normal. You build bunkers and you win the game. Would be my argument, at least.
Yeah, there is very little opportunity for him to lose this week. In
basically,
reality,
the only chance he loses is the kill bots spawn, and they retarget enough times to right click down the transport rather than you're invested. That's pretty much the only chance.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is one of those mutators where I'm not sure sort of whether double S is. I do agree that he's does basically trivialize it, but I'm not sure whether he's trivializes it to the extent that it's just totally free. You still have to move bunkers around and stuff, and people will get that wrong.
Okay. So is it double S or single S?
You still have to move bunkers around and normally, right? In a non-mutation version of this map.
I do.
My argument, right? Because it's not.
I'm not sure if everyone does.
Well, you should. I'm sure lots of people don't, but you should. A lot of people don't. Right? So it's not like you're playing outside of your typical strategy or what the correct strategy would be, which is double S. But it is
what You know what? I can see it in the sense that, does he care about microtransactions? No. Does he care about kill bots? No. Yeah. Stick him in double S. Why not?
All right. Okay.
It kind of makes microtransactions basically not exist.
With the power of movie magic, we officially have a double S Stukov. Okay, so Zagara top of S tier. Who's top of A tier?
I think Stetmann.
Yeah,
because he
Stetmann
was
for sure.
candidate for S. And then Kerrigan, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Kerrigan feeds more
personally
Kerrigan's much better at
easily.
defeating.
Kerrigan's
Yeah.
evolution chambers.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
And
That is
Zerglings.
true. I was thinking Dehaka. Like Kerrigan has the standard Kerrigan problem that if you lose Kerrigan, you're in a world of pain. Whereas Dehaka sort of really like doesn't have that problem. But yeah, I totally agree. Feeding with her is much easier.
All right.
You
Top
guys,
of
you guys pick. I can't make my mind up.
top of B tier.
Abathur.
Yeah.
Abathur.
Wow. Every single Zerg commander. Right? Bar none. The top 6 are all Zerg. Oh my Donnie.
Yeah.
And then who's top of C tier?
I would say that like
Han and Horner?
Zeratul and Tychus are both. Oh, Han and Horner, interesting.
Because they have you help your ally feed mechanic. Because of the salvage.
I always forget about salvage. Yeah. Actually, that's very true.
And the airstrikers will help you clear the rear so that you'll have a higher chance of spotting the bots in front. Or not in front, near your base.
I remain unconvinced that clearing the rear is such an advantage on this, just because
Have you tried it?
there is such a prescribed. Yeah, I have, but I just think there is such a prescribed path on this map anyway.
The point is
Oh no, sorry.
that the
Sorry, sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm being a moron because I haven't had enough sleep. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
yeah, I was just about to say the point is that the point of that is that the kill bots will spawn
Not running
closer to base and will not shoot the transport. The whole point of doing that is that the transport has higher health.
Massive brain fart there. Yeah.
Okay.
No, sorry, massive brain fart there on my part. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Han and Horner happy at the top.
And then
Probably Tychus. I mean, it was an argument about
I-
whether he was even B tier, right? So
Yeah, happy with that. And then probably Zeratul after him for the same reason.
yeah, and then Swann above Phoenix. I think
all right.
Phoenix is a Protoss commander that isn't Zeratul at the end of the day.
All right. We have a hierarchy of races here. It's like 2017 to 2023 1v1 all over again.
Yeah.
Who's top of D tier?
Probably Alarak. And then Raynor.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good.
That's probably about right. Yeah.
They all suck. Don't play as those guys.
They all suck. Okay. No more. Are the rest completely correctly ordered? By the way, you guys don't see it, but
Yeah, I think so.
Karax's head is cut off on the F tier. That's what he deserves for being an F tier in a tier list with a double S. So that's where the guys end up, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for Velocity, please leave it in a comment. I will see you guys next time.